Bam, 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 bam. Dun. Bam, 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 bam. Dun. Bam, 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 ba-da-dum. Dilla, dilla, da. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, ba-da-dum. Dilla, da, da.
La
Da,
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 la.
da.
La
Da,
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 la
da.
la la
Dun,
la
dun,
la
dun,
la
dun.
la
Bum,
la
bum,
la
bum,
la
bum, dun.
la la
Bum,
la la
bum,
la
bum, bum,
la.
bum. If you have been watching my channel for a while or have just seen my new videos, you would know I enjoy a show called Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, or also known as Thomas and Friends. This show had everything a child could want. Action? Yes. Arguments? Yes. But also interesting characters? Definitely. The show had a huge impact on British and US media, showing that kids' shows can be adult at times, similar to how the books did it. That's why today I have decided to make a tribute to Thomas and Friends. So for the people who don't know what Thomas the Tank Engine is, Thomas and Friends was a TV show that ran from 1984 to 2020. No, we do not count whatever All Engines Go is, that is definitely not canon. Even Mattel said it wasn't. The first 11 seasons of the show used live action models, with the later seasons using CGI, with season 12... well, nobody knows what season 12 is. Overall, if you were to ask the average Thomas fan of where to start, they'd probably say the classic seasons and then skip over to season 17, because those are the only good seasons of Thomas, they would say. Or they tell you to have a look at the books first, because the books is where it all started and you'd be able to see how they translated it into models and how successfully they did it. There's also events called Day Out with Thomas, where you get to meet the little blue tank engine in real life. But there have been some astonishing Day Out with Thomases, and I'd recommend Train Boy's video about that, as you'll find out how bad some Day Out with Thomases can be. So that covers the basics of Thomas and Friends. Now I maybe be missing out on a few things, like the merchandising, but at this point I don't think anyone wants to see what Mattel are releasing. Anything to do with All Engines Go is absolutely horrendous. Speaking of horrendous, let's get into the good stuff of the show and why I love this show so much. Like I said before, fans would recommend seasons 1 through 7 and seasons 17 through 21. Why is that? The thing is, it's due to the writing and the production of the TV show. Seasons 1 through 7 was done with models, which were iconic and still are to this day, and seasons 17 to 21 had really good animation. It was also the writers who were also on the team, with Britt Allcroft, who wrote her own original stories and also using the basis of Railway series stories for the TV show. And also Andrew Brenner, who actually wrote a couple of season 3 episodes as a magazine in between season 2 and season 3, which then led the author of the Railway series and the TV production to get into a bit of an argument, but I'm not going to go down that path. But I think the thing that makes Thomas so iconic and so loved is its comfort. Thomas wasn't like every other show. Most TV shows back then and even now are a lot more fast paced and also like to shove morals down your throat. See, that wasn't the case with Thomas. Thomas wasn't a show that would dumb the morals down for kids or raise the maturity for an adult. It would simply just be there for general audiences. It would sprinkle in the morals. It wouldn't shove them in your face like most cartoons would. And that's what made it special. It let the audience gain that independence that they needed at a young age or even adult age, and that's why people look so fondly back on it. It shaped them to be the person that they are today. and that is a lot for a TV show to do. And if the show is able to do that from its first episode, you know the people directing it and the people who originally made it were good writers and were able to know what kids wanted out of a TV show or a book. Right, before I have a big rant, I want to say that seasons 8 through 11 will be not featured or discussed during this video. This is because 1, I've already made a video about that, which you can check out on my channel, is all Hit Era seasons reviewed, and 2, I consider them okay seasons. I don't think they're worth mentioning as they are just middle of the road, and obviously this is discussing the good and bad of Thomas. Anyway, moving on to the rant. Now, like I said before, if you were to ask any Thomas fan what the good seasons would be, you would obviously hear the following that I previously said. But if you ask them the bad seasons, they would say seasons 12 through 16 and seasons 22 to 24. And we do not count All Engines Go because that is the worst thing to ever come to the Thomas franchise ever. And doing a review on season 14, I can definitely see why season 13 through 16 is regarded as one of the worst seasons of Thomas, even the worst eras, due to its similar writing style to literal baby work. Due to Sharon Miller, who is known around the franchise as a bad writer for the franchise, probably even the worst, for adding the 3-step formula, where a character would get a job by the Fat Controller, and then they'd go do the job, but then either they try to be a really useful engine, or their own ideas get in the way of their actual job. When told to do something, they ignore it for the first 3 times until they make the big accident, where they feel sorry and do everything right again. And by the end of the episode, nothing was learned and no character arcs happened at all. And also, most of the episodes contain Thomas and barely any contain any other engine at all. Now, my problems with season 22 to 24 are a lot more different than my views on seasons 13 through 16, and let me explain why. And it all boils down to the unoriginality of the content itself. Now, you may say for seasons 13 through 16, that was just not original. That was just Thomas in CGI. All the shows at the time were doing it. But also at the same time, every single show, at one point or another, has had their characters travel around the world for no explicit reason other to the merchandise in different countries. And that is just simply horrendous because 1, I think most of the writing staff came from either Britain or America. And there was like one Australian dude writing all the Australian episodes. So these were just giant stereotypes. And 2, you've also got the unoriginal writing of most, which were just working for money and not actually creating a good kids show. Those 2 things combined can make a disastrous attempt. But also, there was something else about it. Big World, Big Adventures was not just Thomas going to different countries. It was also part of Sodor episodes. And let me just say that all the new characters, Sodor and in the different countries, were horrendous additions to it. Other than, obviously, the characters from The Great Race, which were barely changed at all and were barely used. You've also got the dream sequences, which has become one of the worst parts of Thomas and Friends below All Engines Go, because I don't know how anyone's going to top that level of stupidity. But anyway, these dream sequences are inside the engine's minds and what they think is going to happen. Now, you can make the excuse that it's happening in their minds, so therefore it doesn't really count or anything, it's not real. Well, the fact they came up with these actual people developed this and not babies or aliens is horrendous. I mean, it's so bad. How could you make Thomas look like nothing that is Thomas? Like, I feel sorry for anyone who worked on the original show looking at this and going, this is our show, this is what our show has became. It is so bad, honestly. But no matter how much I rant about the show, it's not going to change, simply because of the fact that Mattel won't put enough funding into it to make it as good as it is. The only hope now is that All Engines Go, which is doing horribly at the moment, and the film that is upcoming this year apparently, but most likely not, do well in a case. But knowing the state of the franchise right now, I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon, unless through some magical miracle that Lady came up with. The only thing that the Thomas community have now is its fandom, and that is probably the best part of this entire downhill spiral, is the fact that the fandom have been able to show off why the show was liked in the first place, and simply put, they put a lot more effort into their videos. They make it seem almost as if you're watching the show again with the limited supplies they have. Obviously, because Thomas had a budget of £1 million each season. I don't think somebody can replicate that unless they get massive amounts of funding. But still, the Thomas community have managed to show most of all that Thomas can be revived, but Mattel are clearly not going to do any of that. No matter how great or bad the show will be, it will always be a reminder that children's media cannot just be for children. It can be for a general audience at any time or any place. The maturity in some scenes, the action, the use of model making, which inspired hundreds of thousands of people to start model making themselves. That giving inspiration for people is a rare thing to happen, and even rarer to happen in children's media. Thomas may not have had the most intricate storytelling or the best visuals, but it inspired millions, and most shows can't do that, and that is the genius behind Thomas's